at least what I want to be doing is inviting the audience to have feelings, to feel things along with me, to be moved by the words or the sounds or the sights, to just be moved in one way or the other.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. I'm really happy to have you joining me. For those of you who are brand new listeners, I'm Keith Billik. And for those of you returning listeners, I'm still Keith Billik. I don't know if you were expecting somebody else, so sorry to disappoint you, but that's why I have wonderful guests to speak with and to help make things a little more interesting around here. But at any rate, it's March. Happy March. Spring is about to be sprung, I guess is what we would say. And it also means that with every new month, there is another chance to join me and your fellow Picky Fingers listeners for the VIP Very Important Picker Lounge video meetup. So be sure to mark your calendars for Saturday, March 26th at 1 p.m. Eastern. That is this month's VIP Lounge meetup. It's great fun. Every month we hop on a video call to chat about banjos and banjo playing and banjo players and banjo music. All of the topics. And all you need to do to get your meeting code for that VIP lounge is to head over to patreon.com/banjopodcast and sign up to be a supporter of the show, for which I am eternally grateful. And you get to join the VIP lounge, and there's all sorts of other bonuses for signing up there, which you can read about. Another bonus is to get your personal shout out. And today, our very special Patreon customer of the show is Ron Bellis. Ron, thank you so much for signing up on Patreon and doing your part to support the show. I really appreciate it and could not do it without you. So once again, patreon.com/banjopodcast. Otherwise, just make sure you keep in touch. I am picky_fingers on Instagram. If you are a Twitterer, a tweeter, if you are one who tweets, I am at Banjo Podcast on Twitter, or just email me at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com.
Glory, wind in my hair. Glory, sun at my heels. Glory, shadows are lengthening down. Glory, the world, come go with me.
Today's featured guest is Evie Ladin. Evie is not only an expert clawhammer banjo player, she's also a singer, songwriter, percussive dancer, choreographer, square dance caller, and just all-around brilliant performer. And that's probably my favorite portion of this interview. There's all the customary banjo talk, of course, but the thing that really fascinates me about her is just her ability to command attention and engage an audience, and we talk a lot about that. Evie is best known for her work with the percussive dance ensemble Rhythm and Shoes, the old-time band the Stairwell Sisters, and now she leads her own Evie Ladin Band. So she has a wide variety of performing experience, and so I can't wait for you to hear all about those things. Here it is. Give a warm Picky Fingers welcome to Evie Ladin.
My name is Evie Ladin, and I live in Oakland, California. And I'm a little loath to say I'm from California, but California has been very good to me. Okay. I grew up on the East Coast. I always say the Mid-Atlantic seaboard because we moved around a lot between New York City and Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And then I was in the Midwest for a piece before moving out to California. And then I've been touring a lot, for the entirety of my career. So I've been all around this world,
You're
baby
kind of
mine.
From a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah, a friend of mine once said, Evie, you're conveniently from wherever anyone else is from.
Yeah, a good point of connection.
Or I've been there, or know people there, or I've explored the area. So,
welcome back to the Midwest.
Thank you.
Since you're from here,
Yeah.
obviously. What about the banjo part? How did you get to be this touring person who is so well traveled?
Well, my banjo story goes that, my lore is that my dad fell in love with old-time string band music, with folk music, but specifically mostly old-time string band music in the 50s in New York City. He went to Hootenanny at Carnegie Hall, went home, took all of his original rock and roll 45s and threw them out.
Along with his baseball cards?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And my inheritance. But he just fell in love with music, and that became what he wanted to do. Never played, could stand being bad enough to get good. So he never played, but he's an avid music appreciator and just always took my sister and I to parties and festivals. And so it was early days of folk revival. And so, and my mom was an international folk dance teacher, and they split up pretty early on. She moved back to New York City. But so it was all, creative life in a way. My dad had a regular job, but, just having that emphasis on getting together with people to play music and dance. He loved to social dance. And then he opened our house to people traveling through. And that's really how the story goes, because John Cohen was staying with us, and I can picture him sitting on the couch saying, "You girls should play the banjo." And apparently he took us to get our first banjo.
Was that something that you had considered doing before that point?
I was 8.
Okay.
I wasn't really thinking that much about what I was supposed to do or wanted to do.
Attention span of a goldfish, approximately. Well, that's great. So somehow you took to it, though, it sounds like.
Well, it was just like what we did, and it was what the people around me were doing. Not the people immediately around me in suburban New Jersey or in inner city Baltimore, but, in our wider social scene. And I'm very much between generations. I'm full on Gen X. And so there weren't a lot of kids around. My dad was older than the hippies that were, really getting into it. And we, like, a big influence was the Green Grass Cloggers. They stayed with us for a couple weeks. And my sister and I really took to the dancing. And that was kind of the first thing, like starting with clogging when I was about 5. And my sister and I made up routines. And then the Green Grass Cloggers would throw us up on stage to do like a little tweener thing in their festival set.
Oh, that's great.
And my mom made us little clogging outfits. And so the banjo just followed that.
I think I find it kind of surprising that you stuck with it, given that most kids go through at least somewhat of a rebellious phase that might even last their whole life of not wanting to be like their parents. But it seemed like you really embraced that social aspect that was all around you.
I wonder if partly because my dad didn't play, but all of his cool friends did. So it was just we were exposed to it all the time. And then I will say that like dancing was definitely my first love. That was like what I pursued, and I just played banjo for fun and in jam sessions, but more often you'd see me on the dance board.
Right. And maybe we're skipping ahead a bit too much, but then that obviously raises the question of what effect do you think having at least somewhat of a background in dance had when you were learning banjo? Do you feel like that impacted it?
I feel like it's impacted my style of playing. That, and also the fact that most of my experience playing was either in jams or in square dances. So really heavy on the rhythm side, and both from the dancing, I really approach the instrument as a mix of melody, harmony, and rhythm, because you want to be heard and you want to provide a certain service to the music as a banjo player. So I didn't spend a lot of time in my room, working on tunes and figuring out a lot of melodic stuff. It's just not in the way I play.
Okay.
And in fact, I didn't even really understand the banjo neck, like chord-wise, until relatively recently.
Huh. And this is where my clawhammer ignorance is going to come into play. So I'll lean on you for some of this. But I'm curious to know then if you're describing your own playing style as particularly rhythmic, which I totally agree. I hear that in your playing. From a hands-on approach, what do you think are some things that can help people play more rhythmically if that's something that they're looking to do?
Ooh, that's a good question. what will help people play more rhythmically? I mean, I think people get too bogged down in the details of a tune and knowing exactly how it goes. And my experience translates into how I teach a lot. I had a funny interchange on social media recently where I just, liked a former student's banjo post. And she wrote me and she said, I've been studying with Adam Hurt, since she moved away and whatever. And I said, well, he's a lot more methodological than I am, isn't he? And she said, he is. He's really specific, but sometimes your voice comes into my head and says, just play music.
Oh, cool.
And through my years of teaching, especially the group classes I teach through the Freight and Salvage in Berkeley, I've evolved and come to understand the way that I lead people into it. I will give people, some specific things and some tablature, but I've realized that the way I play grew from a response to the fiddle. And that's a lot of what the banjo can be. It's one of the roles of the banjo. And I would listen to the fiddle and respond to it. And in fact, people say like, what banjo record should I listen to? And I was like, I don't ever listen to banjo music. Like I listen to the fiddle. And funny enough, Adam Hurt and I had that same conversation at a banjo camp once. He's like, yeah, I don't listen to banjo music either.
How curious. I guess I'm looking for a way to trick you into demonstrating this. And I know it's silly to ask you to demonstrate a style that you don't play, but in terms of playing that fiddle style that you would, what's an example of what that even sounds like?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that made me think of about getting students to play more rhythmically is like, I will, everybody starts with this bum ditty, right? And everyone starts like a full brush like that. And I say, okay, how about if you just do your brush just on the top strings? Or you do it just on the first string, because a lot of round pick style is like not a lot of brushing, can be more melodic in this way, just single string kind of stuff. And then introducing something that's a little more percussive. And so just really, and then I have people, play play against the fifth string, play the fifth string really loud, but keep your lead note the same. Now play it really quiet, but without your lead note getting quiet. So like that you kind of develop some control over what you want to hear from the fifth string, from your downstroke. And I feel like in my original songwriting, but then also, backing up fiddle players, they need a certain drive from the banjo. And, sometimes it can be this real like kind of a wash of rhythmic sound, and I play some tunes like that to, support my singing, but then, or I might open it up to something that's much more delicate and open. And then, of course,
drop thumbing on that one.
Oh, yeah. And there's a range of syncopations then. And then, of course, there's the like, again, everyone starts with the bum ditty, and then you learn how to put the next or the fill in, where the rest is in the bum ditty, with slides and pull-offs and hammer-ons and stuff, and then drop thumbs. And then once you have the ability to make all these sounds, then you have to figure out how to take them away. So that you create different kinds of syncopations. Yeah,
right. And so you're going through all these really interesting techniques and talking about how you can use them. You also mentioned something about, I forget how you put it. You said don't try too hard to learn the tune exactly. Just try to capture the rhythmic aspect of it. So
I struggle with teaching my students, here's how the tune goes. Because every banjo player is going to interpret the tune differently. And especially if your goal is to play with other people, you want to be able to respond to what's going on around you and adjust. So, so many students, they just want a way to play it. And then they play it that way. And the students who have stuck with me, which have been, hundreds at this point, if not thousands of students at this point, have really appreciated the way that I teach. Not only does it encourage them to understand the instrument but mostly to develop their ear. It's an oral tradition. It's not written down. Tablature it's a helpful tool at first, but it can really become a crutch. Like, it's nice to remind you of things or to, show you specific techniques that you sort of aren't understanding quite. If you're a real visual learner, it can be helpful. But, I had a student come to me with a big book of tablature, and I was like, oh, play something for me so I know kind of where you're at. And she would play a tune through once and then move on to the next tune. And I was like fascinated by this approach, and there's so many different ways of playing and enjoying playing.
Right.
Some people just want to play by themselves and just want to play different tunes. But I keep trying to, I feel like a big part of my mission is to facilitate community engagement, to facilitate that experience that, you don't often have in a capitalist society of doing things for pleasure, and not in a consumerist way, but in a participatory way. And so getting people comfortable playing with other people, playing in jam sessions, going to dances, doing things that are really sort of engaging in that communal health thing that that traditional music and dance brings.
Yeah, right. But in the context of you teaching a lesson, how are you able to convey a sense of community through perhaps a one-on-one lesson? Is that a big part of the lesson? Is maybe you two jamming together, or how does that come through in that context?
Well, I realize I didn't finish answering the previous question, but like in a one-on-one,
I hope you remember what the previous question was, because I don't think I do.
In a one-on-one lesson, I don't actually teach very many one-on-one lessons. I filter most people either to my group classes or to Peghead Nation, to that subscription. But in my one-on-one classes, I often will then pick up the guitar or the fiddle, which really throws people because they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, just keep doing what you're doing, keep playing the tune. And eventually their ear starts to hear the connection between what they were learning on the banjo and then what they're listening to and like what the connection is. And then the previous question I was talking about, like in terms of how I teach, I just don't give people necessarily, here's how you play the tune. I'll say, you could do this, you could do that. You can get this note open. You can get this note with a slide. You can get a different tuning. You can get, there it is. You can get, you can do a drop thumb, or you can do do pull-offs. You can achieve the same thing in different ways. And because the fiddle has so much fluidity with the bow, and the banjo is so connected to all of these African-rooted syncopations, I just try to get people comfortable with moving around and not just playing the same thing the same way every time. So, for example, I choose a lot of tunes with words because I have students use their voices a lot. And I say, like, don't think of it as singing. Think of it as like using your voice, because everyone feels like they can't sing. But the reality is, like, I feel like singing the tones as you learn it or singing the words to a song just helps develop your ear, connecting to your instrument. And so, play a time through the song. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Play just the chords and sing the melody. Say, darling, say. And then when you're not playing, then play the melody.
Right.
So that they can really go back and forth. But it's all of these techniques to get people more flexible with what they're doing, and then also to really develop their ear. And like I said, students who have stuck with me, they sometimes had a really hard time weaning off of tab, or just sort of felt a little unmoored at first, but then felt so much more capable later on.
I'm not a prolific teacher, but I've taught enough lessons to know how intimidating that can be for a lot of people, not only to get off of tab, but to then be presented with what you said, different options to play things that they're hearing.
Just tell me what to do.
Right. But no, if you can make it through and tough it out some of those early stages of learning, you're a much more complete musician, really, to be able to do that, I think.
But I also think that there's an entry point for any level, because, like if I'm in a banjo workshop with they're all mixed level, for that matter. Even if it's, an intermediate class, people are still mixed level, and especially how they process information. That, somebody's just here and I'm like, you just play the chord changes, sing the song, sing the tune as you go, but just like play the chord changes. I was like, you are learning as much, as if you were actually playing all the parts of the tune. You get it in your ear. The traditional way of passing on music, the kids are at the knee of the people playing and they grow up listening to it. Then someone just puts an instrument in their hands. And you see this all over the world,
Right.
And I just feel like we have divorced ourselves from the continuum in the process of learning music. And I really try to bring people back into a less linear and more circular way of thinking about the music.
Hey folks, there has never been a better time to learn banjo online through video lessons. And the best game in town is Peghead Nation, one of our sponsors. With Peghead Nation's streaming video courses in banjo, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, dobro, upright bass, and ukulele, you'll be able to learn bluegrass, old time, and plenty of other styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in roots music. PegheadNation.com features a great lineup of banjo instruction with some of these courses. Check it out. Beginning Banjo with Bill Evans, Bluegrass Banjo with Bill Evans, Clawhammer Banjo with Evie Ladin, Wade Ward Style Banjo with Bruce Molsky, the Banjo According to Danny Barnes, and Contemporary Bluegrass Banjo with Wes Corbett. Now, no matter what course you select, they're all going to come with high-quality multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation, plenty of tab, play-along tracks, and tunes and songs for you to learn. Perhaps best of all, if you join any of these Peghead Nation video courses now, you'll get your first month free just for being a Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast listener. So just go to pegheadnation.com and use the promo code PickyFingers at checkout. Another sponsor of the show is GHS Strings. We banjo players know that a banjo is only as good as the quality of strings that you put on it, and GHS has a long track record of providing the top quality in banjo strings to some of the top industry professionals such as Bela Fleck, J.D. Crow, Sonny Osborne, Todd Taylor, and me. I'm a GHS user, so check them out at ghsstrings.com. Now, if you ask me where I go to purchase my GHS strings, that answer is simple. It's the same place that I go for all of my banjo, guitar, and any other stringed instrument needs. It's Elderly Instruments here in Lansing, Michigan. They've been family-owned since 1972, and it's the world's most trusted source for new, used, and vintage instruments and all the accessories and strings that you might need. Now, if you aren't close enough to Lansing, Michigan to visit them in person, you can also see their entire inventory online at elderly.com, or feel free to give them a call to speak to a knowledgeable salesperson at 517-372-7880, or once again, see what they have at elderly.com. I wanted to talk more about maybe your mom's influence, because you have this rhythmic style and you kind of cut your teeth playing at the square dances, you said. So that's a particular rhythm that's suited to that style of playing. But if you started as a dancer and your mother was an international dance instructor?
Folk dance teacher,
Folk dance teacher.
Yeah.
So a lot of folk dances are defined by the rhythm that you use when you perform that dance, right? I'm wondering if you have explored any of that in your playing, or did you ever have any playing situations for different types of dances other than square dances?
Not so much other kinds of dances on the banjo. And again, it was like some square dances, but then also just jam sessions and playing for fun. But I do feel like, clogging and percussive dance, and like it started off clogging, but then, my first career really, I became a professional as a dancer with the company Rhythm and Shoes.
Right.
And so, and it was a very, very precise, very professional, exacting company. And so you get very specific with your rhythmic exploration. And before that, something that's been really seminal is when I was 16, Stephen Senders, who's a banjo player from Ithaca, New York, and played the Wildcats and the Chicken Chokers and other now old school open old time bands. Anyway, he did ethnomusicology research in Ghana, and he came to a Shokin Fiddle and Dance that we went to every year growing up. Again, some of the very few kids there at the time. And he taught these Ghanaian rhythms, and this light bulb went off for me. And this is a big part of my origin story that's kind of out there, because this light bulb went off that this is so like in the music and the dance, these rhythms are so foundational. They're like buried inside the syncopations of old time fiddle, in a way that distinguishes it from Celtic fiddle. Like the tunes are the same, but the rhythms are different. The approach is different. The, harmonic systems are a little different. Yeah. And so I kind of dove full on into that in college. I created my own major at Brown University called African Studies and Dance. I had a great dance teacher who really mixed West African and contemporary dance. It was the first time I really explored dance in an official way. I never took, jazz, modern, ballet, studio dance at all growing up. It was all social and informal couple dancing, and then learning different percussive dance styles, French Canadian, some English, some Irish, all that kind of stuff. So I had all this rhythmic training, but studying African music is like so much more overtly polyrhythmic, and coming to understand even better, not only that, but then also I just studied in every department, everything connected with the continent and the history of enslavement, and then what happened in this country. And it's really like, this has been a big part of my mission too, is that this is America's first, or North America, or this country's first syncretic music, is this mix of white, black, and brown in the American South. And then years later come to realize, like, everywhere around, up and down North and South America is this mix of where the black people were taken from, what brown people were there, and where the white people came from Spain or from England or whatever,
France or whatever,
like really created different styles of music. So you look at what happened in Brazil, you think, oh, Brazilian music is so, old and traditional. It's the same history. Not exactly the same, but, it was like Spain and Congo as opposed to, Ghana and England, so there's a lot in
all
there.
These different combinations.
Yeah.
Right.
But all of that syncretism is what created, in the American South, is what created this, quote, traditional music. And then all these things came out of that. I don't know if you've ever seen the video Talking Feet that Mike Seeger and Ruth Pershing put out years ago. It's Southern Appalachian solo flatfoot styles.
Okay.
And it shows both white and black folks. And when the black folks, you really see in their style like the birth of tap dance, just in that they call it buck dancing, what they're doing, but they're doing some things that you would think of from clogging, but the syncopations were moving more, all these things were happening simultaneously. Wow. And so we're moving more towards, swinging it, and what we hear more in tap dance and jazz. So I love that history. I love understanding some of these connections over time, because, like the image of Appalachian music in this country is very Anglo because of a very racist history. And then even stereotyped as being very hillbilly and backwards or whatever. And so it's interesting to just sort of illuminate all the influences and the roots. And that's just really,
right.
Yeah. And sort of the academic study part of it really grabbed me for a while.
And it's just exciting to hear how it, when the sausage comes out of the grinder, it's fun to see what parts
what it tastes like.
Exactly. When and why and how did you, or maybe did you make a decision at some point to focus on music as a career? Was that a conscious decision, and what led you to it, if so?
Well, I mean, I've always been writing songs. I think I was hesitant to admit it because growing up around so much traditional music, not like people weren't writing songs, but I was just shy about that aspect of it. Yeah. And also about my musicianship, because I had developed much more of the dance side of things. And I was in rhythm and shoes for most of my 20s and really developed my professionalism and everything. And the last project I did with them was a collaboration with Keith Terry and Cross Pulse, when Keith and I fell in love, and I ended up moving to California instead of to Chicago, and very easily, immediately was connected to a much more multicultural scene, but then fell in with the old time and trad music communities there. And dance-wise, there just wasn't what I did. out there. There weren't people doing it. And I don't know if you know this, but like, there is a tap dance scene. The tap dance scene is a lot more competitive than communal. And it can be both, but I just wasn't good enough. And that wasn't like, I'm very community and like ensemble oriented, she says now on a solo tour. But within a couple months, I just kind of ended up in an all-gal old-time string band. And so I feel like my musicianship really grew in that group, the Stairwell Sisters.
I'm going round this world, baby, mine. Go round this world, baby, mine. Go round this world, I'm a banjo picking girl. I'm going round this world, baby, mine. I'm going down in Texas, baby, mine. Going down in Texas, baby, mine. Going down in Texas to the one I love best is mine. Going down in Texas, baby, mine. I'm going to Arkansas, baby, mine.
The dancing took a little bit of a backseat, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was somewhat of a backseat, but also, to me, they're just the same, like I always dance in the show. I started calling square dances because there were all these new old-time musicians who wanted to play faster than the contra dance would allow, so or play crooked tunes or whatever.
Yeah.
So I got my mom's old, square dance books from the 50s and 60s and started learning how to call square dances. And, also, my partner, Keith, is most known for body music, body percussion. And his whole thing is he's trained as a jazz drummer. And then he put all of his rhythms on. And he did a lot of study with world music systems. And he expressed it all through body music, body percussion. And so I was also doing that. And when I was playing with the Stairwell Sisters, but he brought me out to be part of this group Cross Pulse, which is a multicultural quintet where everyone collaborates on each other's traditions. So it was like you think you're done with something in your life and then years later it cycles back and it's exciting. So, I mean, I'll make this a short part of the story, but I did all this study in Africa and I spent a lot of time in Nigeria. I had a Fulbright to study there. And then I came back to the States and I'm white. And diving into the African music and dance scenes in America wasn't as, I knew I was never going to be totally accepted because the African Americans felt, as they rightly should, a certain kind of ownership to that environment. And I just was insecure enough to really want to feel more deeply connected with what I was doing. And anyway, so with Rhythm and Shoes, it was kind of diving back into the more traditional American
Getting
stuff.
to do that again, yeah.
But then moving out to California, here I was able to, reconnect all this stuff again. So everyone's arts and cross pulse comes from the African diaspora. And so I've got them square dancing on a banjo tune. I'm playing banjo on a Afro-Cuban son, and we're all mixing it up. And it's all music and dance.
So you mentioned that when you moved out to the Bay Area, you had a renewed focus on your musicianship. So I guess that steers us back to your banjo playing. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, are you able to maybe point out any important elements of your style or like playing skills that you find yourself relying upon frequently?
I mean, I guess I started developing more in a band situation. So we started doing more arrangements of things. Mm-hmm. And there was a fiddle in the band. So, I could rock out and be in the background, just playing, really supporting on the banjo.
Uh-huh.
We also had a dobro in the band. Lisa Berman's a great old-time dobro player.
Oh, cool.
And so it was just, the mix of sounds was a little more contemporary, I guess. But everybody brought material to the band, and that was the first time I started bringing some original songs. And I just felt I just really grew as a musician. And I guess in terms of crafting a song, a performance song, like the song that I recorded with them and then reworked in my own band a decade later, starts off with this style like, come down from the mountains to the rolling hills where the mist settles in the valley and corn grows on cold limestone. So you have this real shushy sound. Come down to the door of my home. Come down to the door of my home. Having fills exploring different sounds of how it wasn't just totally straight up. And also because there are other lead instruments playing a high version, playing a low version. And then when I brought it to my band later, it became a mashup with, which I tend to do a lot, is taking an original song and then the instrumental part is a tune. Lost Girl.
Oh, right. Yeah, I love doing that too.
And so going from this, real rhythmic, shushy sound to, real more specific
a more
melodic
precise
stuff
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So especially with maybe a somewhat of a unique blend of instruments, do you find yourself having to adjust how you play, for example, with a dobro player as opposed to when you don't have a dobro player? Are you able to pinpoint what that might be? I know a lot of this is
it's just staying out again, just being more rhythmic, playing more low, or finding just finding a groove that's going to support what's going on. I mean, this is also, we're a performance band, and old time music, is not the most performative kind of music. And it can be, just real straightforward tunes are really great, but it's music for dancing. Yeah. And so, it should make you want to dance. But because we were a performance band, I would dance some and we would sing and we would switch around instruments and who was singing lead. And so in getting into arrangements, and more detailed arrangements, it definitely had me look at how I play and making things more interesting than just, my training of just play the tune.
Right. Well, let's talk about the fact that it's all a performance, because something that I find myself really admiring about your performances and about you as a performer is just, so I think I made you laugh last time we got together. I referred to you as the straw that stirs the drink because...
I don't remember that.
Okay, it was the last time at Great Lakes. But so I don't know if you can infer what I mean by that, but that, even in a situation where you might be on stage with a lot of accomplished musicians, you have a way of just taking over the presentation and getting everyone
I hope that's
on
a good
board.
thing.
It is a good thing. I don't mean it in an aggressive way.
Yeah.
No, I just really dig your stage presence and the way that you engage with an audience. And I'm wondering where you think you might have learned that from, or are you able to tell people how you do that? Because it's definitely a skill that not very many people
Honestly,
have.
I think some of that comes from being a professional dancer, because you are just out there with just your body.
Uh-huh.
And, we were a percussive dance company, so you're doing a lot. It's, oriented around the sounds coming from your feet, but we did a lot of creative choreography that Sharon Leahy choreographed and was very expansive in her way of thinking about it. And so I learned so much just about stage presence, being in front of people and where to look and how to engage. And it's if your face is boring, you're boring. And especially as a percussive dancer, I remember years ago, someone said, most people are looking at your face. They're not looking at your feet. So you're thinking about your feet. And I actually noticed recently, I was looking at a video of my band playing, and I could tell that I was just listening so hard to the band that my face was stupid, like, so, so as a performer, it's like, you have to think about those things if you want to really stay engaging. I mean, you don't have to, you can really just express it through the music, but I don't know. There's a part of me that just feels like you want to be bringing people in, you want to be inviting people into the situation and not feel like that there's some wall between you. And then when I was in Rhythm and Shoes, I also was a DJ on community radio, WFHB in Bloomington, which you get really used to talking to nobody. You know, you got to be engaging.
Being a podcaster can be kind of like that too.
Absolutely. You got to be engaging and have a nice voice and, no dead air and all of that. Almost to a fault, I think, that I fill a lot of space. Sorry.
No, at least I get to edit out all my awkward pauses. You didn't have that luxury. I'm sure you would.
Not then.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think a corollary to they're not looking at your feet could be they're not looking at your hands on the banjo or your finger picks or whatever I might be concentrating on at that moment?
I mean, definitely, because, we got off stage recently and everyone in the band, we were sort of nervous because it was the first, real big performance we'd done post-COVID. And performance is a muscle, like you can't practice performing in front of people. You can only do it in front of people. And there's this interchange that happens. That's beautiful. It's the whole reason why I do it is like you bring people into collective experience. It seems to be a theme in what I do. And, so we were a bit nervous and we all felt kind of sloppy and we're a little down about our performance. And then I look at the video and you don't notice any of that stuff. Like even looking at the places where I quote messed up. Right. It's not what comes across. And I remind people of that all the time is that like, it's, especially if you're competent, if you're good at what you do, mistakes make you human. But like nobody's really noticing is that it's like as detailed as you are necessarily.
Yeah. I've had the opinion that a lot of being a professional musician has to do with maybe not where you are at your peak, but maybe where you are at your floor. If you can still deliver like a pretty decent
good
performance, like on your worst day when you're sick and whatever, like that makes you pretty good at your job, I think. So it seems like, you learned a bit of that audience interaction from your dance instructor who gave you that advice. That definitely suggests that it's something that can be worked on and maybe isn't just a natural skill that some charismatic people have and others don't. I mean,
some people do, but like as a dancer, you're definitely more conscious of your physical presence in space, and maybe more comfortable being a physical person in the world. A lot of musicians are really not aware of their physicality at all.
I'm probably one of them. I'm not a front person at all. I am totally happy to just be off on the side in the shadows and be playing as well as I can. But yeah, I don't need to be the spotlight. But I guess a lot of the reason I'm asking you this stuff is for myself. That is a weak point. So are you able to, you said people are looking at your face, and if you look boring, then you're going to be, or if you look bored, then you're going to be boring to them. Is that what you said?
I mean, unless you're super virtuosic, which I am not. Like I don't think of myself as a virtuoso on this instrument or on any instrument or on anything in particular. But I hope I have enough character in what I'm doing.
I think that's your virtuosity is the collection of all of your skills and the presentation.
Well,
yeah. Are there any other specifics that come to mind in terms of how to have that good presentation and good rapport with a crowd and a not boring performer?
I think, again, like I come back to like engaging people in collective experience. Like, so that the idea is that you're not alienating your audience by being so much better than them. Everyone has enough problems thinking that they're not good enough one way or the other, that I just feel like I feel like it's so, the more I go on in my career, and especially what I see happening in our country and in the world, I just feel like people are lonely and they don't have those communal experiences. We've been, freedom, quote, freedom often is people divorcing themselves from a deep culture. And a deep culture can be stifling, but it can also be grounding. So I hope, in all cultures everywhere have music and dance traditions, because it's what people do. You're moving a pulse, you're feeling this common nonverbal kind of communication, and it really serves a psychic function. It serves a function in your brain, right. Which was never more clear to me than during COVID, how much I need to get out of my quote thinking brain and into just my experiencing brain,
which social brain,
which
right,
can happen in nature. But like when I'm following a fiddle tune on the banjo, it's I am in the moment. And I guess I'll also say something that I apparently like chemically need about performance is performance. You're 100% present. If you think about other things, you're going to mess up. You're not there. And the things you do, they're gone as soon as you do them. You can't go back and correct them, or you can stop and start over, whatever it is that you're comfortable doing. But like, you are fully present. Yeah. And what you're doing is at least what I want to be doing is inviting the audience to have feelings, to feel things along with me, to be moved by the words or the sounds or the sights, to just be moved in one way or the other.
Are you able to point out some even more specifics of how you do that, how you get them involved? Is this by banter between songs, the way you talk about music? Is it about eye contact? Is it about like what?
Yeah, I think it's, being really present on stage, looking into there's this skill of looking into the audience without actually seeing anybody, that, I don't know. I think that comes from playing big concert halls where it's totally black out there and the lights are in your eyes, but there's a way of looking so that it looks like you're looking right at people. And I had a lot of practice doing that.
Is it just over their heads?
Yeah.
Is that what you do?
It's sort of like the horizon, or
right.
or even just like looking into the middle of the crowd where you imagine the middle of the crowd to be. And some people get really turned off by not being able to see the audience, but I just sort of like envision the people there,
Yeah.
And some of it is definitely banter, not taking myself too seriously. And I also just feel like the mix of music and dance, just like, I don't know, just as it's multifaceted, and it just kind of something we've noticed, like in producing the International Body Music Festival. This is something it's really hard to convey in words, to write in grants, to put into publicity, but that by doing body percussion, things that, when you're just using your body and even without instruments, everybody has a body. And there's this really visceral, like heart connection that happens, that we've heard feedback from the audience time and time again of like how connected they feel because we're just, using this instrument. And actually I read a great article referencing David Byrne's American Utopia, how he was aiming for that experience of having everybody untethered by cables. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a pretty beautiful work of choreography and musicianship.
I'm a big David Byrne fan, and it's a crime that I have not seen it because I've had it recommended to me just too many times to count. But I'm a fan of his, and I'm familiar with like what the concept. Right.
But so in an interview, I think it was the two dancers, the choreographers, who were talking about the kinds of movements they wanted to make, and it is definitely about connecting with an audience, about being somewhat pedestrian, things that feel very approachable. And I don't know, I want to be that. I want to be approachable and for people to feel like that this is a part of them too. It's not separate.
Well, you do it. You're the straw that stirs the drink.
The straw that stirs the drink.
You already heard that. So that's I'm on record with that one.
Well, it's great.
Let's shift to your instruments. You said this is a newer banjo, but is this what you would consider like the primary instrument that you use for performing? Maybe?
So I played the same one banjo for 25 years. and it was a mutt that I bought off my brother-in-law went for $150.
All right.
That was
Got your money's worth out of that, it seems like.
definitely. I had finally figured out that it was a Slingerland pot, and the neck was made by Mike DeFoche, who was a somewhat elusive character who played a lot with Clyde Davenport. And he unfortunately passed away a little too young, but I was able to be in touch with him by letter several years ago because he doesn't use the internet or didn't.
Yeah.
And
analog emails.
yeah.
Right.
And I sent him a record and I said, what can you tell me about this? And I didn't even know that he had made the neck until the dowel broke. It splintered when I was on tour in Cape Breton Island one time. And there was a stamp on the inside. So I thought it was a no-name banjo forever. And then his stamp was on the inside, no internet presence. It's a longer story. It's out there on the internet.
So you had already been in touch with him just unrelated to this? Or
No.
it's only after that you saw
After
him
I saw
out?
his
Okay.
stamp and I saw it, I actually had to first sleuth out who he even was because he wasn't on the internet.
No internet, right.
And his sister actually got in touch, was like, I think that's my brother. Because we just put it out on the internet. Who is this? This is before, Facebook and all that. And there was internet before Facebook. But
I think I remember.
Anyway, so this banjo is like, it just has a great sound. It has a great sound. It also, clawhammer players really like higher action. It just in the style of playing, because you've just got fingernail, or in my case, fake fingernail on the strings with no other, no metal picks or whatever. And then you also want as open of a sound as possible, So clawhammer players, at least in the time that I was seeing most people playing, and a lot of that was around Round Peak area, North Carolina, Virginia, and at the festivals and stuff, the way most clawhammers players were playing really, used the open sound so much. So you don't want to do, massive closed chords that really like tamp it down, right? Yeah. So the high action sort of gives you a great sound like that. Right. So in the last few years, I have been wanting to explore the neck more, to really understand the the full range of the instrument in a different kind of way. And so I started learning and teaching. You stay one step ahead of your students, like right. How, just all the positions and how they're related, and what bluegrass players take for granted, because that's how you play, is learning all these 4-fingered closed chords. And bluegrass banjos tend to have lower action, and the strings are a little closer together. So they're set up differently.
Sure.
And so I think that that's partly why the scoop evolved, was so that you can still get the low action up the neck, but the high action over where you play.
Where you need to, yeah.
Yeah. So the pandemic sent me into my first geek out over my instruments. I was like, all right, I can't be out there playing. Let me figure out, let me see if there's another. So I started shopping around. And as you probably know, unlike about any other instrument, there are so many variables on a banjo as to, and I really dove into that. I really was uninterested in any of that stuff beforehand, because I just had my instrument. I loved it. I didn't care.
It's a black hole, though. It'll suck you in.
Oh my goodness. I finally understand why people have so many different instruments. And I'd had other instruments, but I just never played them. I always played mine.
Yeah.
But I also, early in the pandemic, partly because I was practicing a lot, got a shoulder injury that really took me down. But I was like, okay, well, I need to not have such high action if I'm going to be fretting up the neck, because it's stressing my joints, etc. So maybe it's time to look for a scoop neck banjo. I wanted something that sounded a little different, and I dove into the black hole.
And you found something. What is it?
I did. So this banjo I've got, it's its first outing into the world, and it's a Will Cedars from Vermont. He actually had sent me, I thought I wanted a 12-inch pot, and I kind of landed on a Dobson as for a different kind of sound, Dobson tone ring. But I didn't realize he puts his Dobson tone ring on top of a rolled brass ring. So a lot of the Dobsons are just, the Dobson donut tone ring on wood. Right. And that has a certain sound. And I actually bought Rickard. Some people say Rickard, some say Rickard.
I've heard Rickard from some fairly reliable sources. So I'm going with that. I used to say Ricard too, but
Yeah.
I've switched.
So I went down. Griffin Strings is my local music store that will have a number of different banjos. So I went down there, and either of the banjos didn't really sound that like all the ones I tried that they had in stock. And it was pandemic, so like everyone sold out of banjos, but they had a bunch there and some more coming. And the Rickard was the first one that had like a really different kind of great zizzy Dobson sound that I really, really loved.
Yeah. How would you, just to interrupt you, because I don't know even for myself, how would you characterize the Dobson sound? What are the attributes of that?
Well, there's so many other variables that even affect what that is. How big
Sure.
the pot is, and where the bridge is, and how big the tailpiece is, and all of what the head is, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But the Dobson sound, like it's a donut shape, and it's like it's a ziz is all I can like. It really has like a little more of a buzz to it than being super like pinpointed.
Okay. So whereas like a White Lady is a bit brighter and attacky, maybe this is less so. Is that fair?
Can be, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like the sound is a little wider.
Okay.
Of how you strike it. And so most of them are on wood, and I really like the Rickard. I got a 12-inch from Will Cedars, and it was just because his sit on the rolled brass ring, it's also taller, and that with the 12-inch and the fact that my shoulder was giving me trouble, it was too much banjo.
Yeah.
And it was really resonant and, I mean, beautiful instrument, but I really loved the neck. So eventually he got me an 11-inch, and I am liking it. It's a short scale instrument. So some of the things that I was talking about feeling sloppy on stage, or the fact that my fingers are overshooting unless I'm careful.
Yeah.
Because
you're still adjusting.
I am still adjusting to, and even in the concerts I've been doing recently, I have to use my eyes a little more than I want to, just because I'm just not used to the short scale.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like the short scale is also helping my shoulder issues of not having as far of a reach. I've just had to change all kinds of things, as you do.
Oh, that's a bummer.
In your playing, how you approach your playing.
Right. So beyond the maker and what type of banjo, is there anything else that you're very partial to on it? Like I see, is that a Will Cedars bridge? I see that looks like a unique sort of bridge.
It is. It's a Will Cedars bridge, and they come with Renaissance heads, and my old banjo had a fiber skin head, and I wanted to give it a try and see what I thought. I might end up with a fiber skin head because I like it a little bit warmer.
Okay.
And the other thing that I discovered is that how it sounds to you playing it is really different than how it sounds out in the world.
Big time. Yeah.
So, for example, the Rickard, I loved how it sounded to me. And it's not that it didn't sound good out in the world, but it was too muted for performance. It didn't have the attack and the velocity, of another banjo might.
Sense.
And so it wasn't a good performance banjo. And oddly enough, the day before I bought my Rickard, they told me, it was like someone bought the 12-inch yesterday. It turned out to be my bandmate.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So we ended up with
So you got to check it out.
practically the same banjo. His is 12-inch, mine's 11-inch. I still have mine. I might move it along. We'll see. Just because I know I don't play lots of different instruments. I tend to stick with one. I think maybe also because you get settled into where your fingers land and all of that.
Of course. That's a beautiful fingerboard too. Is that striped ebony?
I believe it's
Maybe?
rosewood.
Is it? Okay. Just really
I
dark.
don't want to speak ill of it, but it's a walnut banjo, and Will Cedars just has incredible craftsmanship. I mean,
Yeah, it looks
just
wonderful.
The neck is, I just keep calling it a very sexy neck. Like I just keep touching it. I'm like, oh, excuse me, I'll be over here with my banjo.
Just petting it.
It is, yeah.
Right. Well, good. For being a new one, that's a good way to welcome it to your,
Yeah.
good graces and whatnot.
And Jake Blunt has one of his, and Allison DeGroot plays a couple of his. But Jake was telling me like it takes some months for it to like really open up and for to settle in. It's like having a new puppy or something like that. It's
Gotta
a little too gregarious.
house train it.
Yeah,
That's
and
funny.
then also I think a lot of people would have medium strings on it, and I'm still tweaking the strings, but again, playing for so many years and playing, my lead finger, my index finger on my right hand gets a workout.
Yeah.
And so I need it to be easy and as responsive as possible. And I tend to go with lighter strings. The other thing that's really frustrating is just noticing how different it is between being open, like in C or G tuning, and then capoed up. And I play a lot of tunes capoed up, and I was like, the jury's out is if I love what happens to it once it's clamped down a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes they
really
don't have
changes.
the same character. Yeah, it's all very interesting, and it's the endless conundrum for banjo players. Like you said, they're endlessly
I avoided it for so
adaptable
long.
and customizable. Yeah, exactly. Great. Tell everyone where to find you and your music and how to go see a show, all that stuff. How do they find you?
I am the only Evie Ladin on the internet, so you can do some experimental spellings, and it probably will direct you to me. My website's evieladin.com. It's my name on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Although I haven't done any banjo on TikTok. That's all been on the body music side of things and the dance side.
All right.
Spotify, streaming services, and for better or for worse. And those are all the things, right?
Yeah, just type
if you
type
need
it in. You'll find
my
it.
PayPal or Venmo, you can just shoot it there. Evie Ladin, it's all good. But
Wonderful.
But all my shows are up on the website, and I really love getting out into different communities and playing and singing and getting people doing the same.
Well, we love having you around. So really nice to see you and to speak with you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening, everybody. That's going to do it for this episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. You heard some song clips in this episode. They were Glory by the Evie Ladin Band, Hell Amongst the Yearlings by Beverly Cotton featuring the Greengrass Cloggers, Banjo Picking Girl by the Stairwell Sisters, and Walkin' the Dog by the Cross Pulse Percussion Ensemble. Special thanks to today's Patreon supporter of the show. That's Ron Bellis. Head on over to patreon.com/banjopodcast to support the show yourself, and that will get you invited to the VIP Lounge video meetups. This month's meetup is March 26th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope to see you all there. Email the show, pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com, and hope all of you have a great rest of your March and beginning of your spring, and I will see you all next time.